Alexander Fleming is often celebrated as the gentle detective of the microscopic world, a quiet scientist with sharp eyes and a mind that sparkled with curiosity like sunlight bouncing on ripples of water. He was born in 1881 on a peaceful Scottish farm where the hills rolled out like giant green pillows and morning fog drifted through the valley like a sleepy dragon waking from a nap. As a little boy, Fleming wandered through fields with the same energy as a puppy, poking at mossy rocks, streams, insects, and mysterious puddles bubbling with life too tiny for anyone else to see. He loved crouching next to puddles and imagining them as magical kingdoms filled with tiny swimmers, wiggling creatures, and microscopic drama that only he seemed interested in. His siblings laughed when he inspected grass blades or muddy footprints like a detective solving a case, but he didn't mind because his imagination was busy building invisible worlds. Watching his mother clean cuts and scrapes on the farm sparked his early fascination with healing, especially when he wondered if tiny creatures were helping or sabotaging the healing process. He asked endless questions, so many that adults sometimes blinked in confusion and muttered, "Well, nobody's ever asked that before." He grew up believing the world was full of hidden secrets, waiting patiently for someone curious enough to find them, and he planned to be that person. When he moved to London as a young man, the bustling streets felt like a maze of noise and motion, but Fleming kept his calm, observant nature, taking it all in quietly. He studied at St. Mary's Hospital and discovered that the world of germs, bacteria, and infections fascinated him more than anything else because it felt like exploring invisible universes. He became a researcher with eyes so sharp that colleagues joked he could probably spot a germ hiding behind a microscope slide trying not to be noticed. During World War I, Fleming treated soldiers with terrible wounds, and he hated how tiny infections barely visible could defeat even the strongest men. He wished for a powerful invisible shield, something that could swoop in like a superhero and defeat harmful bacteria before they caused harm. He watched infections spread like tiny armies taking over a battlefield, and this frustration made him determined to find a scientific weapon to fight them. Fleming returned to laboratory life after the war with a new purpose, spending long hours leaning over glass dishes filled with bacteria that wiggled, multiplied, and behaved like tiny troublemakers. His lab became famously messy, with papers stacked like leaning towers, glass dishes everywhere, and shelves that looked more like chaotic forests of scientific clutter. Visitors often gasped when they entered, wondering how anything could survive in such a hurricane of disorganization, but Fleming simply shrugged and said, "Everything I need is in here somewhere." He preferred letting discoveries happen naturally, believing that nature sometimes whispered answers when you weren't busy forcing experiments to behave perfectly. That belief proved true in 1928 when Fleming returned from vacation to find a petri dish he had accidentally left uncovered, now taken over by a greenish-blue mold colony. At first glance, it looked like a strange tiny swamp had sprouted on his desk, the sort of mold most people would throw away without a second thought. He almost tossed it too, but then he froze, leaned closer, and felt a spark ignite in his mind like a tiny firework lighting up. The mold had created a clear halo around itself where all the surrounding bacteria had disappeared, erased as if an invisible force had swept them away. Fleming stared at the dish, blinking in amazement, realizing nature had just delivered a clue straight into his messy laboratory, like a gift wrapped in spores. The mold was releasing something powerful, something that could kill harmful bacteria without harming the human body, something so extraordinary it seemed like science fiction. He named the magical substance penicillin, and even the word itself sounded like a spell whispered by a wizard who preferred working quietly. Fleming didn't dance around the lab or shout in excitement. He simply smiled, scribbled careful notes, and continued observing the mold with calm, steady fascination. He knew penicillin could change the world, but he also knew turning it into a real medicine would require skills beyond his expertise. He published his discovery and sent it into the world like a message in a bottle, hoping someone would pick it up and understand its importance. For years, people overlooked it, and Fleming continued his daily work, joking sometimes that maybe he should have grown mold shaped like a celebrity to get more attention. Then, finally, scientists Ernst Chain and Howard Florey recognized penicillin as potential and transformed it into a life-saving antibiotic that stunned the world. During World War II, penicillin became a miracle drug, healing soldiers quickly, preventing deadly infections, and giving doctors new hope they had never known before. The world celebrated Fleming, Chain, and Florey as heroes, and newspapers printed stories calling Fleming the man who discovered the life-saving mold. Fleming accepted praise with humility, always repeating that he had simply been lucky, that the mold had done the real work, and that his messy habits deserved at least half the credit. His gentle humor made people smile, especially when he joked that penicillin had probably appeared because mold enjoyed surprising him. Despite fame, medals, and speeches, Fleming remained the same quiet scientist who preferred the company of his microscope and his tiny glass worlds. He spent hours watching bacteria swim around like hyperactive swimmers at a miniature pool party, taking notes with the patience of someone observing stars in the night sky. He warned everyone that antibiotics needed to be used wisely or bacteria would become resistant, growing stronger like villains learning new tricks. He believed the smallest creatures on Earth could be the most dangerous or the most helpful depending on how humans studied and understood them. Even when honored by kings and world leaders, Fleming stayed soft-spoken and humble, reminding audiences that science advances through teamwork, accidents, curiosity, and open minds. Children loved hearing how the messy lab guy changed the world with a moldy dish he almost threw away, a story that made science feel magical and surprisingly relatable. Fleming continued researching, teaching, and exploring microscopic worlds as if each day held another potential surprise waiting under a microscope slide. He loved sharing stories from his research, describing bacteria as if they were tiny actors in dramatic plays featuring battles, escapes, and scientific plot twists. His colleagues admired him for his gentle nature, sharp mind, and ability to notice tiny details others often overlooked. Fleming believed nature was a silent teacher, offering clues in strange, unexpected places to those patient enough to look closely. He often reminded young scientists to stay curious, to explore boldly, and to never throw something away before investigating it thoroughly because you never know which mistake might be a miracle in disguise. Penicillin went on to save millions of lives around the world, treating infections that once caused fear, grief, and helplessness for centuries. Fleming's discovery transformed medicine, turning once deadly diseases into simple problems solved with a few doses of antibiotics. Today, every time someone takes medicine for an infection, they are following the path that began when Fleming paused and stared at a moldy dish others would have ignored. Hospitals, doctors, nurses, and families owe countless moments of relief to the gentle Scottish scientist who never stopped wondering about the invisible world. His legacy became a shining reminder that breakthroughs sometimes come quietly, wrapped in accidents, messiness, and curiosity instead of explosions and dramatic speeches. Whenever a young kid examines something strange like a weird mushroom or a fuzzy mold spot on bread and asks, "What's this?" they are echoing Fleming's spirit of curiosity. And somewhere in the story of science, you can almost imagine Alexander Fleming smiling softly, grateful that the same sense of wonder that guided him is now lighting sparks in new minds around the world.